There's something especially brutal about a life stolen in silence. No headlines, no helicopters, no frantic media blitz. Just a teenager, 18 years old, vanishing on the open road and being left to rot in a canyon while the world kept spinning. Naomi Kidder wasn't running from home. She wasn't caught in some crime ring or tangled in bad decisions. She was a young woman who took a trip with friends to Rawlins, Wyoming in the summer of 1982. And for reasons we still don't fully understand, she decided not to return with them. She took a backpack, a little bit of money, and she set out on foot. And somewhere between the town she left and the life that she hoped to return to, someone ended her story violently and permanently. Her body wasn't found for months, and her name wasn't restored for over a decade. Why? Because even when bones are found, girls like Naomi don't always get priority, because the system didn't bother to put her dental records into NCIC until 1994, because someone strangled her with barbed wire, tied it off like garbage, and left her to be forgotten in Natrona County. But she wasn't forgotten. Not by her family, not by those of us who still care, and not by the landscape of the Great Basin, which continues to whisper the names of its dead, if you're willing to listen. So that's what we're doing here today. We're listening, we're digging, we're refusing to let this one slide into obscurity, because Naomi mattered, and so did what happened to her. Welcome to Rocky Mountain Reckoning. Now let's get to work. Angela, some cases make you angry, not because of how they ended, but because of how long no one noticed, how long a name went unspoken.
Yeah, Naomi Kidder was 18. She had a backpack, a few dollars, and a long summer ahead of her. She was supposed to ride back to Buffalo with friends, but instead, she disappeared into the Wyoming basin.
Her body was found months later, badly decomposed, left out near a remote patch of Natrona County. She'd been strangled with wire, buried shallow, and forgotten.
But not identified, not for 12 years. 12 years of being listed as a Jane Doe, 12 years where the system missed her because her dental records weren't uploaded, because the dots weren't connected, because someone thought a missing girl from a small town didn't matter enough.
This is Dark Dialogue Rocky Mountain Reckoning, the series where we return to the crimes rooted deep in the dirt and the snow of the American West, the ones that never left the hearts of the people who lived through them.
We investigate the stories buried under snowfall, prairie dust, and decades of unanswered questions. The ones whispered through cattle fences, past broken barbed wire, and across wind-lashed highways.
Disappearance isn't always about getting lost. Sometimes someone's waiting.
I'm Angela.
And I'm John.
And in this episode, we'll tell Naomi Kidder's story. How she vanished, how her body was left to fade, and how the system failed her more than once.
Because Naomi didn't just disappear in 1982. She disappeared again. Into paperwork, silence, and neglect, but no more.
This is the girl who disappeared twice.
And this is Dark Dialogue, Rocky Mountain Reckoning. So, Angela, I think you dug up some location information for us on this one.
I did. Still in Wyoming.
Still in Wyoming.
Still in some little towns in Wyoming.
I wish the hell we could get the hell out of Wyoming, because I don't like talking about all this shit this close to
I know. We're getting it over with, though. So
true.
Hopefully we don't have to come back to bullshittery in Wyoming.
Oh, we will. We're getting through the Great Basin side of Wyoming, but there's all kinds of bullshittery in Wyoming still left to cover.
We can take a vacation and talk about bullshittery elsewhere in between. Well, Clowlet Penzer is what I was just about to say.
Yes, a Clowlet Plensler.
Yes.
Yes. One of those.
The Sam Hell. And the fact that I just went ahead and said it anyway, whatever. So, this episode takes us to Buffalo, Wyoming. Located almost an equal distance between Yellowstone National Park and Mount Rushmore, Buffalo, Wyoming is a town with a rich history rooted in the American West, particularly the era of frontier expansion and the Johnson County War. Founded in 1879 alongside Fort McKinney, it served as a supply point for the fort and a haven for travelers on the Bozeman Trail. The town's name is attributed to a suggestion made at the Occidental Hotel, where a resident of Buffalo, New York, proposed the name for the new settlement. It officially became incorporated in March 1884.
I stayed at the Occidental too. It's freaking awesome.
I've seen it. I haven't stayed there.
I stayed there, and then and there's like a room upstairs that has all these old maps and books, and it's almost like a research library that you just go hang out in if you're...
It's like a John Haven.
It is, man. I drove my girlfriend crazy. She's finally like, we gotta go. I'm gonna stay in the whole week right here.
Right
in this room.
So John will lead me to explain a little bit about the historic Occidental Hotel. So I've taken this directly from travelwyoming.com. Quote, when you step through the front door of the historic Occidental Hotel in Buffalo, Wyoming, you are truly stepping back into the Old West. Standing on ground trod by the likes of Butch Cassidy and Calamity Jane. In addition, everywhere you look, you will see the way it really was in frontier days. The stunning embossed ceilings in the lobby and the saloon are the original ceilings. The magnificent back bar in the saloon is the original back bar. Even the chairs you will sit on are likely to be antiques original to the hotel. The original Occidental Hotel has been accurately and beautifully restored to its original grandeur and is the only fully restored frontier hotel in Wyoming. The accommodations combine historic authenticity and modern comforts, and all suites and rooms are furnished with antiques and decorated in elegant period style. All of them also have private baths, comfortable queen or king beds, and central air conditioning. Award-winning restoration of one of the greatest frontier hotels of Wyoming includes elegant and spacious suites available, beautifully restored 1908 saloon, complete with the bullet holes, fine Western dining in an opulent 1890s setting at the Virginian restaurant, outdoor dining at the Clear Creek Cafe during the summer season, founded in 1879 in a tent alongside Clear Creek. The Occidental Hotel was the first establishment in the area that later became Buffalo, Wyoming. Today, the Occidental boasts 2 restaurants, the only authentic frontier saloon in Wyoming, a living history museum, and some of the most comfortable and beautifully restored rooms and suites to be found anywhere, making it the perfect venue for everything from business conferences to weddings, to a simple overnight stay. Truly one of the historic treasures of Wyoming, the Occidental is also a fully functional hotel with all the modern amenities, including satellite TV and wireless access. End quote. Just a few years after Buffalo was incorporated, the population was 1,807 people, which grew to about 3,799 people during the time when this case took place. 4,415 residents were reported to live there at the 2020 census. Time for my notable people portion.
I like this part.
He sits up. The few I selected from Buffalo were 2 of Wyoming's governors, Mr. Frank E. Lewis and our 33rd governor, Mr. Mark Gordon. Now, I know that most residents of Wyoming, at least those in the general area, would come for me if I didn't mention Longmire Days.
Damn straight.
The annual celebration in Buffalo, Wyoming, honoring Craig Johnson's fictional city of Durant, and they say Absaroka County, we say Absaroka, and his Longmire Mystery Series was inspired by real places and landmarks in the community. It took place from July 17 through the 20th this year, and I took an excerpt from their website to give some insight into what this event does besides celebrating the TV show, because it's actually pretty darn cool.
Yeah, it is.
Quote, at the core of the Longmire... That's not part of the quote. I added that. Quote, at the very core of the Longmire Foundation is a dedication to community support. Our local community and the larger area. Oh, okay. Our local community and the larger idea of what a community is at its heart. Our annual goal is always to support the community. So 2025 charitable donations were the Longmire Foundation plans to support Friends Feeding Friends of Johnson County and Tunnels to Towers Foundation. Friends Feeding Friends of Johnson County, No Hungry Children in Johnson County is the vision of this amazing organization. At JCEFFF, they are passionate about feeding kids. From the governing board and the staff to their large volunteer base, they work to make food available for the kids of Johnson County. This organization currently delivers food bags to 7 area schools and operates food pantries in 4 of those schools. Friends Feeding Friends feels all children should be respected by providing an inclusive, non-judgmental, dignified approach to accessing food. Tunnels to Towers Foundation. Since 9/11, this organization has been helping America's heroes by providing mortgage-free homes to Gold Star and fallen first responder families with young children, and by building specially adapted smart homes for catastrophically injured veterans and first responders. They are also committed to eradicating veteran homelessness. The Longmire Foundation couldn't be prouder to support these groups in their missions.
That's pretty freaking cool.
That is.
You know, Buffalo's a beautiful little town. It really is. I like it over there. The Occidental is an amazing hotel. It's really freaking cool. It sits right there as the creek kind of rolls through the town. And there's so much history over there. You know, the Johnson County wars were a huge part of Wyoming history.
I was gonna talk about that, but I didn't want to get into war. But I knew that you would if you wanted to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was really a cattle war, very similar to ironically enough, the Johnson County wars of New Mexico, where Billy the Kid was made famous. A similar thing was going on in Wyoming, where you had the cattle barons that were basically pushing the small ranchers off of their land. The U.S. cavalry was helping them, and it was a big shitstorm that blew up over there. And they had big names like Tom Horn, which came out of there, who was hung for shooting a kid that trespassed, and a woman who ended up getting hung. One of the few women hung in Wyoming was Cattle Kate. But that's Buffalo. That's that area. And it's a really neat spot. So for those that have not been there, I do recommend going through Buffalo. And, you know, that's also where, well, that whole area over there is where a lot of the Sioux Wars were fought. It's not very far from Buffalo where the wagon box fight occurred. And then you have Custer's Battlefield, which is really not too far.
Yeah, from there. I've been there.
Your way around.
Like 2 years ago. It was pretty cool.
So one of my all-time heroes is Crazy Horse, and he spent quite a bit of time running around over in that area over there.
I realized when I was looking into this that we missed Longmire Days this year, and we had discussed it, and I was like, dang it.
I know, but then I had surgery.
That's true.
That screwed it.
You could have been you could have been sitting in a vehicle recovering.
Yeah, but when I'm in a sling, I avoid crowds because everybody continually bumps into my freaking arm. And it's just easier for me just to not go than to spend the whole day guarded because I don't want people bumping into my damn shoulder. So
just wrap you in bubble wrap and take you places.
Yeah. That was kind of like the same thing when you asked about the rodeo. And I was like, well, if I wasn't in a sling, I might be interested.
Yeah.
That's no. All right. Well, this is another sad one. You ready for it?
All right. Yeah. I don't have tissues, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. It's the summer of 1982 in Buffalo, Wyoming. Naomi Kidder is just 18, full of energy, headstrong, beautiful, and carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She's not just a teenager trying to figure life out. She's a mom. Her baby girl, Bobbi, is the center of her universe. The reason that she's trying so hard to make something better for herself. Being a single mother in small town Wyoming is not easy. People talk, they judge. But Naomi's not one to back down. She loves her daughter fiercely. She dreams big And when a chance comes up for a quick trip to Rawlins with some friends, she takes it. Maybe it's for a break, maybe to chase opportunity, maybe to breathe, just for a minute. She doesn't come back. She left Buffalo with a borrowed backpack and a handful of cash that wasn't hers. She left behind her baby girl, not forever by choice, but because someone out there made that choice for her. This is where Naomi's story begins. But for Bobbi, the little girl left behind, it was the day her whole world went silent. So, Naomi Lee Kidder was born December the 31st, 1963, in Wyoming. I couldn't find exactly where, but I'm going to assume that it was Buffalo, in the Buffalo area. That's where her family lived. She's described as a beautiful 18-year-old, suggesting a positive perception by family and community. You know, pick the few pictures of her. She's got a big, pretty smile, and I don't know. It's just a heartbreaking story. Her parents lived in Buffalo, and so I think that, you know, the family history is there. I don't know, you know, how far back. I don't know if like her grandparents and stuff were from Buffalo as well, but I do know that her parents were also from Buffalo. And like we said in the intro, she was the mother of a 1-year-old daughter. So that little girl would have been born around 1981. And, you know, it's never easy for a teenage mother, ever.
Yeah.
But the farther back you go, the harder it was, because the more the community looked down their nose at you, you know. And so we're talking early 80s. I have no doubt that there was plenty of that going on in her life. You know,
for sure.
People judging her, looking down their nose at her. But she's described as being outgoing and adventurous, and I think maybe a little impulsive. And I say that just because of the way that this story takes place and the events of this story. You're going to know what I'm talking about when I say that I think that she's a little bit impulsive. She lived in Buffalo with her parents and her daughter, Bobbi, and she attended Buffalo High School and had recently graduated. And I couldn't find anything like academic achievements or extracurricular activities or anything like that. And, you know, with these cases in these small towns, it's really hard sometimes to find a lot of information. You know, a lot of the bigger places have bigger papers, and so you can find them. But in this case, I really couldn't find much of anything. It would have been tough for her being a single mom, especially in Buffalo. You know, Buffalo, especially in the early 80s, it was predominantly a ranching town. So it's not like, you know, you have a bunch of big money over there or anything. It would have been tough being a single mom. There's not a lot of job opportunities. Really, in Buffalo, still, there's not a ton of job opportunities. For the most part, it is still a very big ranching community. You know, there's a lot of sheep that are raised over in Buffalo, a lot of sheep and cattle, but there's a huge Basque population over in Buffalo. And the Basque are people from South America, I think. I don't know.
He says quizzically.
Yeah, because I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're known for, I mean, they live sheep. That's and they know everything about sheep. And so there's a big Basque community in Buffalo still today. And now even you go up into the Bighorns and the vast majority of the sheep herders up there are Basque. And so they have a big Basque festival over in Buffalo as well.
What people won't have a festival for.
Yeah.
But I'm here for it.
Well, it's really cool. I mean, it's all about their heritage, you know, and I don't know, they're neat people. I don't know a whole lot about their culture, but you know, it's that very much South American bright colors and fun and dance. They have all these like special, I don't know, their dances. You know, every culture has their dances, and like the Basque although girls wear these really beautiful, brightly colored dresses and stuff and dance. It's a ton of fun. But anyway, that's another kind of unique thing about Buffalo is you don't run into a lot of Basque really across the country.
Yeah. And in Wyoming.
But but it's because they were brought in because they know sheep herding like nobody else. They live it. There's even a Longmire episode that includes Basque.
Huh. I've watched them all. I must not have been paying enough attention.
Well, that particular episode is the one where the one Basque wife puts the poisonous stuff in the well and poisons the brother because he's wanting to sell part of the family property. Yeah, so she poisons the well. That's that particular episode.
So, can we have a Dark Dialogue Festival?
I think we should.
Because everybody is having festivals for everything.
I think we probably should.
All right.
And not too far from there is KC, Wyoming, where they have Chris Ledoux Days, which is awesome. If you don't know who Chris Ledoux is, we just can't be friends.
I know who he is. Finally, a question John asks that I can say yes to.
You know, it would have been hard for Naomi, no doubt about it. She's trying to find a job, raise a daughter on her own. I don't know anything about the father. I couldn't find anything out about that. So it would have been a struggle. Financially, it would have been very difficult. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of indicated in the way that the story plays out. You know, she went with friends. She didn't have a lot of money. She had to borrow money. And then we'll find out she ends up hitchhiking, which we know, sadly, how that story usually ends out. And it's going to be the same for Naomi.
It used to be a theme.
But, you know, she's living in Buffalo. She's recently graduated from school. She's doing her best to raise her daughter. And I couldn't find a lot about this trip to Rawlins. I don't know why for sure they were going to Rawlins.
Tour the prison like you?
But I don't know. I have no idea. From Rawlins, of all places.
Actually, that one's probably still running, wasn't it?
In the 80s? Probably, actually. I don't remember when it closed. But Rawlins just doesn't strike me as like the vacation destination. I'm sorry, but I was pretty clear about how I felt about Rawlins earlier in our Rawlins episode. It is not my favorite place. I don't know if there was something going on in Rawlins or I just have no idea. But
well, I would imagine they have a fair or something too. Everybody has a fair.
Well, of course they do, because that was where some of the Rawlins murders occurred, was during that would be Converse County Fair. But I don't know why in the hell you go from Buffalo clear across the state to go to a fair in Rawlins. I don't know, but we do know that they went. Her and a group of friends went, and it seems like it really seems like this group was going to go down there, and she just wanted to go be with friends. Typical 18-year-old thing to do, and absolutely nothing at all wrong with it. Yes, she was a mom, but you know, she didn't like run out on her daughter.
Yeah, moms need a minute too.
She arranged for her parents to watch her daughter while she went away for the weekend. So not a big deal. Something that, gosh, all of us do. And there was no like documented family conflicts or any relationship conflicts that I could really come across in her story at all. We do know that she borrowed a backpack and money from her friend in Rawlins before she took off hitchhiking, which really suggests to me that she didn't have much as far as money goes at all. And you know, unfortunately, I just couldn't figure out a reason for the circle. I mean, it's happening in June. It's not likely that it's going to be a fair, because that's almost always July and into August.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was just like, I don't know.
Do you want me to look up if anything was happening in June?
You can see if you can figure anything out, but June 29th, 1982, Rawlins, Wyoming. Naomi Kidder steps out into the wind with nothing but a backpack, a little bit of cash that didn't belong to her, and a plan that she hadn't exactly shared with anyone. Her friends had already left, headed back to Buffalo. But Naomi had other ideas. Where she was going next, nobody knew for sure. But what's clear is that she was alone, on foot, on the edge of a high desert town that doesn't take kindly to wanderers. She walks east, maybe towards the Sinclair truck stop, maybe towards someone that she thought she could trust. She's 18, determined, smart, but vulnerable in a way that the world too often preys on. Out here, the roads stretch endlessly and the shoulders narrow to nothing. A girl with her thumb out on a Wyoming highway in the 1980s might as well have been invisible, except to the worst kinds of people. This is the last time anyone sees Naomi Kidder alive. We do know that her and her friends got to Rawlins okay, and there really wasn't, I couldn't find anything of note. It gets really weird right here because I really couldn't figure out like why she didn't go back with her friends. We know that she traveled down there with them, and that was her only ride. So it's just so weird to me that she didn't go back with them. Can't get my mind around that. But we do know that she chose not to return to Buffalo with her friends and instead decided to stay in Rawlins. And so she borrowed a backpack from her friend, and she borrowed a little bit of money, and I couldn't find out how much, but every place that described it as a little bit of money. So I'm thinking that maybe $20 or something like that. And, Rawlins, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, does sit right on I-80, and it may have offered a chance to travel elsewhere. I don't know. And we know before she took off, like I said, she took her friend's backpack, borrowed a little bit of money, and then her friends took off and they headed back to Buffalo. And so we don't know exactly. We think that Naomi left Rawlins on July 29th, but we don't know when. We're guessing probably in the day because it just wouldn't make a lot of sense for her to take off after dark. And she began hitchhiking and intending to travel to some unknown destination. There's no records that confirm her exact route or intended endpoint, but just kind of common sense tells me that the possibilities would include she was headed back to Buffalo. She was headed to another town in Wyoming, like maybe Casper or Riverton, or maybe she was traveling out of Wyoming, headed to Denver or Salt Lake or something like that. We know that she was last seen in Rawlins but we don't know any other of the specifics about that at all. We've talked about in so many of these cases this season in Rocky Mountain Reckoning, hitchhiking was a very common practice in the early 80s, especially in places like rural Wyoming, because, there is zero public transportation, especially in the 1980s. But even now, there's almost no public transportation in Wyoming. And the economic constraints that would have been present for a young mother and a young unwed mother in the 1980s, like we said, she just wouldn't have had a lot of money. So women, especially women, but people in general, often hitchhiked. It was very frequent for that to be their main means of transportation. And, we know now how dangerous it was, but in the 80s, it was just commonplace.
Not telling me.
What were you looking for?
Why they went to Rawlins, if there was anything going on, like a fair or anything. Doesn't say.
Yeah. I know I sure couldn't find it. The whole thing really strikes me as odd. Really odd. And I would have expected to see a report that her and her friends got into some big fight.
Yeah. You don't borrow things from people you just fought with.
Right. And so I don't know if she was like running away or I don't know. It's strange to me that you travel halfway across the state with a group of friends and then you're like, I'm out and go.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I guess the reasons are just left to history. And the sad part of it is her case was handled poorly. And so there wasn't a lot of investigation done. It would be really freaking nice to have a sheriff's report where they interviewed her friends and her friends said this is what was going on, because almost certainly her friends knew. She didn't just like get up and walk out and not say anything to anybody. She borrowed a backpack. She borrowed money. They knew that they were leaving Rawlins without a person that went with them. So there had to have been some discussion of why the hell aren't you coming back with us? And what the hell are you going to do? And where are you going to go? And
at least I would have been that way.
I don't know much. I don't know anything about the group of friends that she was with. I don't know if it was girls. I don't know if it was boys. I think it's shitty that it happened. I try to put myself in that position, and I don't think it would have ever happened with me. I got to be honest with you. Even at 18, I think I'd have been like, oh no, you're coming back. There's no way I'm leaving you. And if they were insistent, I would probably call their parents and be like,
you leave with who you came with.
I got to tell you, Naomi is like hitchhiking. She's taking off. She won't get in the car.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? I just can't see myself leaving this girl.
No.
Or a guy. I can't see myself leaving a friend in that situation.
Like I said, you leave with who you came with.
Yeah. So it strikes me, the whole thing just really strikes me as odd. And we're left guessing where she was heading. And we don't know. Like I said, Casper might have been a potential destination, Cheyenne, Riverton, but none of it makes sense.
Not at all.
Because she's got a 1-year-old daughter at home. There's no indication in anything that I read that she was like a bad mom or wasn't interested in being a mom or in any way wanted to desert her baby. So I don't know. But unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever know because there's just no information about it. The one thing we do know is on June 29th, 82, she chose not to return to Buffalo with her friends. She borrowed a backpack. She borrowed, quote, a little bit of money, whatever that means, and she took off hitchhiking. So we don't know. We don't know what happened between June 29th of 1982 and September of 1982 when her body was found. Wow. And so
several months.
Yeah. So we know that the murder likely occurred on or around June 29th. That's the last time that she was seen alive when she took off hitchhiking. We're guessing that the murder likely occurred in or around Natrona County, which is quite a ways from Rawlins. I mean, there's a couple different ways you can go from Rawlins to Casper.
Yeah.
It kind of depends, but you're a little over 100 miles, I think, from Rawlins to Casper. And so we don't know where she was murdered, but she may have been murdered right away after being picked up relatively close to Rawlins and then transported to Natrona County, or she could have been murdered in Natrona County relatively quickly before her body was dumped. We don't know. The cause of death was strangulation with barbed wire. There was a barbed wire ligature that was found knotted around her neck, and the autopsy confirmed strangulation as her primary cause of death with no additional details on injuries. So I don't know about sexual assault or anything. She had been out there for several months, and so decomposition would have definitely had an effect on, especially like sexual assault. A lot of the time, indications of sexual assault are only soft tissue injuries, which you lose with any kind of decomposition. So
I would hate to see other injuries apart from soft tissue during a sexual assault. That would be
right. Well, I mean, you could
utterly violent.
You could have other injuries, but they wouldn't necessarily be indicative of sexual assault. You know what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying. A sexual assault incident that causes bone damage, utterly tragic.
Yeah. But, the knotted wire ligature around her neck
was already tragic.
Definitely indicates a deliberate, violent act. And it's consistent with the control-driven homicides that we've seen across the Great Basin, although this one is absolutely unique. Nowhere else have we found, or will we, in this series, a victim with barbed wire used as a ligature. I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever heard of that before. In any case.
From a fence? We don't know.
Who the hell knows? We have no idea. So I don't even know the exact date that her body was found. Just early to mid-September is all I know. And it was found in Natrona County, Wyoming, near Casper, which is northeast of Rawlins. What's that?
I thought I read that the day it was found.
Oh, did you? So it was found in a remote dump site. And like we said, it was severely decomposed and partially mummified, which is indicative of exposure for 2 to 3 months. So we're pretty positive that she was dumped relatively soon after she was last seen.
Discovered September 10th, 1982.
Okay, thank you for that. So really no other forensic details that I found listed as far as like clothing, personal items. And, a lot of that is probably due to the length of time that she was out there. And then like so many of these victims, the vast majority of them, they're dumped with nothing. A lot of them don't even have their clothes when they're dumped. They're literally dumped with nothing. So Naomi was initially unidentified and labeled as a Jane Doe. We know that a missing persons report was filed July 1st with the Buffalo Police Department. And that was just 2 days after her last sighting in Rawlins. And I'm sure that, when she didn't come home, her parents probably freaking frantic and filed a missing persons report. It's odd as shit to me that, we're talking 1982. We're not talking 1922 or 1902. And even in 1902 in Wyoming, I think that somebody missing from Buffalo, you have a body found in Casper.
Yeah.
It seems absurd to me that she would go unidentified until freaking 1994, 12 years.
Yeah.
And they couldn't put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah. Who's missing?
That's insane to me. Even, like I say, even in 1982, that is insane to me. We've talked about our several unidentified victims, and we still have more to discuss. But speaking specifically about like our Elko County Jane Does that we've covered this season, like Star Valley and Devil's Gate and Thousand Springs, and that's a lot different because, first of all, we don't know where they came from, but I'm assuming maybe they came from out of Nevada. So yeah, okay, I can get it. 1972, 1974. Maybe a missing persons report from Nevada doesn't make it to, I don't know, Connecticut or Florida or wherever the hell. But a missing persons report doesn't make it from freaking Buffalo, Wyoming to Casper, Wyoming.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. And it's insane to me that a body would be found. It wouldn't even take me an afternoon. It would take me a couple hours, maybe, to call every law enforcement agency in the state of Wyoming and say, hey, I've got a body I just picked up. It appears to be a young female. I don't know. Maybe they said her ages were between 16 and 25. I've got a young victim, ages 16 to 25, female. Are you missing anybody? I could do that. And I'm not even exaggerating. Probably a couple hours. You're not talking about that many phone calls.
And the calls don't have to be that long.
No, it's a yes or no. Or, a yes, and then you get specifics. That call might end up being a long one.
Yeah.
But when they're like, no, I don't have any missings following that, with that. You're not even asking somebody to take a day. You're asking somebody to take a few freaking hours and make a couple phone calls. I don't know. I think it's absurd. I think it's absolutely inexcusable.
Yeah.
That she was left unidentified for this long. Because you're talking shit, it ain't very far from Buffalo to Casper at all.
No.
100 miles, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. It's not very far.
And then, on top of that, then her dental records weren't entered into NCIC until March of 1994.
Yeah.
Again, absolutely inexcusable. And once they were entered, they came back with a match. So we know that Buffalo did what they should have done. Buffalo did the missing persons report. They obviously uploaded her known dental records to NCIC, but it took Natrona County 12 freaking years to do it. Unexcusable. And, I get it that this was the 1980s. There was limited forensic databases, and Wyoming is a rural place, but I also know that Casper Police Department, and this was, I'm pretty sure, Natrona County Sheriff's Office, is now, and it was then, one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the state. Casper is our second largest city. So of all of the different sheriff's offices and police departments in the state, Casper would have been most well equipped to make sure that this shit got taken care of. And it didn't. So unfortunately, Natrona County Sheriff's Office and any larger Wyoming authorities investigated the body as a Jane Doe and chalked it up to hitchhiking. And I don't think they did much of anything, to be perfectly freaking honest. So no suspects were identified, obviously. And it definitely fits in with our whole Great Basin series. I mean, as sad as it freaking is, I could have written one script and just changed the name. And I could have talked about almost all of these victims. They're almost all the same.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so damn sad, but it's a fact. So we know what the little teeny tiny infinitesimal bit that we know is Naomi Kidder was likely murdered on or very near June 29th, 1982. My guess is that she was probably picked up in Rawlins and was given a ride to Natrona County. And that is most likely where she was probably murdered relatively shortly before her body was dumped, would be my guess. The whole barbed wire thing, I don't know how that factors in, unless she was drug out of the vehicle and raped and murdered like out there on the plains. And there was just a piece of barbed wire handy. Mm-hmm. Which in Wyoming is just damn near everywhere, unless you're on like a city street.
Yeah.
Pretty much everywhere else you go, barbed wire's not too far away. So it doesn't surprise me it would fit with something like that, but we really don't know. We do know that barbed wire is a very unique signature to her case that, like I said, being a true crime junkie that has researched hundreds of cases at least, I've never heard of that before. I'm sure that it's been done. I'm sure that wire has been used, barbed wire has been used as a ligature, but I've never heard before.
Yeah. It is kind of sounding familiar to me, but I don't know if it's just because I've been trying to think about it since you first said it.
Natrona County, 1982. The kind of place where the silence has teeth. Naomi's body was found in September, decomposed, partially mummified, left like garbage off a remote stretch of dirt road, a barbed wire ligature still knotted around her neck. Whoever killed her didn't just want her gone. They wanted her silenced, discarded, erased. But people like Naomi don't vanish without someone seeing something. And killers like this, they don't strike just once. Over the years, names have floated to the surface. Some lived nearby, some passed through, some were monsters we didn't know about yet, and others we just refused to see for what they were. In the next segment, we're going to walk through each of those names, one by one, because somebody out there knows which of these men turned Naomi's final walk into a death sentence. Let's talk about our suspects. And again, just like I got done saying, I could just change the name and use the same list of shit brain, worthless pieces of freaking garbage, because it's going to be the same. Not going to spend a lot of time on each one of these just because it's going to get boring talking about this, telling the same story every episode.
Yeah.
So we got Royal Russell Long, piece of shit, was a carny trucker. He's a high suspect for the Rawlins rodeo murders. He's up there for Belinda May Grantham. We know that he kidnapped Sharon Bald Eagle, where, at least in my opinion, I'm certain he murdered Sharon Bald Eagle.
Right.
We know that he most likely killed multiple girls across Wyoming, Colorado, Oklahoma. He's a piece of shit. We know that. I don't think he's a very good fit for Naomi Kidder at all. Maybe 10% likelihood. It just doesn't match his MO. We've talked about it before. He typically is focusing on, for the most part, he's focusing on like carnivals and rodeos and shit like that. And it really doesn't match him. And my favorite suspect on this one,
DeWayne Eaton.
Surprisingly, no, but I knew you were going to say that.
Robert Ben Rhodes.
Nope.
Really?
Nope. Larry DeWayne Hall. So first of all, this piece of shit is one of the ugliest bastards. Robert Ben Rhodes has him beat for ugly, but this guy, he's got the dumbass facial hair thing that I don't even know what the hell you call that. Is that like a Fu Manchu? Isn't that what that is?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's a Fu Manchu.
Well,
He's a freaking loser. He was convicted of Jessica Lynn Roach's 1993 kidnapping, but he's suspected in up to 50 murders. And we've talked about him and we'll continue to talk about him because he's a piece of shit that was active in the area during this period of time. We know that he was active in 1982. He's suspected in killings in Wyoming, including Buffalo, the Buffalo area where Naomi was a native to. But the biggest reason that he is like number one on my suspect list, and honestly, everybody's suspect list, is because a document with Naomi Kidder's name on it was found in his possession in 1994 when he was arrested.
Oh, nice.
So how did he get that?
Yeah.
We also know that his MO is strangulation, sexual assault. He targeted young female hitchhikers, which aligns perfectly in Naomi's case. The barbed wire is unique, but like I said, the barbed wire is unique to everybody. I think that it was just a weapon of opportunity. I think that it likely was laying near wherever he murdered her.
Yeah.
He reached over and grabbed it. No different than, somebody's killing somebody in a kitchen and they grab a freaking cast iron skillet to kill him with, It's just, it was there and he used it. I couldn't figure out exactly what the document was that he had in his possession, but it is the strongest circumstantial evidence. And along with, we know that the son of a bitch was in Wyoming during this period of time and his MO matches. But then we have to include DeWayne Eaton as a possibility. That piece of shit continues to pop up in all of these cases. We also know that his MO was to rape and strangle victims, stab victims. Who the hell knows what all he did? He's a sick, disgusting sadist. But I just don't think that, for me, the document with her name on it,
Yeah.
that's huge for me.
The same year she was identified?
Yeah, I think that was just coincidental.
Still.
But yeah, that's huge. And I couldn't figure out what the document was, but from all the reports surrounding it, it makes me think that it's not like a newspaper report, that it's more like a chat or something that was personal to hers.
A trophy.
Yeah. Not something that just happened to have her name on it, but something that had belonged to her. And, DeWayne Eaton's going to always come up. So is Robert Ben Rhodes. But Robert Ben Rhodes, again, I just don't think he's a very good fit for her. His MO doesn't really match. He definitely kidnapped women, he raped them, and he murdered them. But the son of a bitch was known for having a torture chamber in the sleeper of his truck.
Well,
so he's not the kind of killer that's going to be out murdering somebody out in the prairie and pick up a piece of barbed wire to strangle them with. And maybe that's not what happened, but if it's something he had in his truck, then we would have seen it in other victims.
Yeah.
If that was his signature, he liked to use barbed wire, but we don't see it anywhere
Unless
else.
he decided to change it up, but doubtful.
Not likely.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a good fit at all. Plus the fact his known trucking routes were not up in that area of Wyoming. He potentially went across I-80, but his big area was Texas up into Utah. So he's just not a good fit. For me, I think that it really comes down to two, and that is Hall and Eaton. And I say Eaton because we know that he was active in this area during that period of time. And we also know that a lot of her murder details do fit his MO. But for me, having a document with the victim's name on it found in a known killer's possession, that's huge evidence. And he confessed then took it back.
Panted.
Yeah. So I think that the piece of shit is the killer. I wish that they would at least try him for it. Honestly, I think that there's enough circumstantial evidence. And again, I don't know what that document is. If it really truly is something that was personal to her, then I think that he should be tried. And if he's found not guilty, fine, screw it. His son of a bitch is in jail anyway.
I was about to say, maybe they're considering it since they're not telling us what the document was.
Maybe, or maybe I just didn't find it. I do find it extraordinarily sad that I read an article not written by, but about her daughter, who is like our age. She's a little younger than me.
Yeah,
and
younger than me too.
She has no memory of her mom. She was 1 when this happened. And she would have been 13 when her mom was finally identified. Yeah. I mean, what this poor girl has gone through in her life. And luckily it sounds like, she had really great grandparents who just took her and raised her like their own. And, it didn't sound like she'd had a bad life as far as that goes. But as a child, I cannot imagine going through something like that. And then you go through the trauma of losing your mom, growing up without your mom. I mean, luckily she was 1. And so losing her mom, she wouldn't have really experienced. She wasn't old enough to.
Yeah.
But as she grew up, growing up without her mom would have been extraordinarily difficult. But then that wound is ripped open all over again 12 years later when her mom is identified. And then she would have had to have gone through that whole trauma and then getting the body back up, finally having a funeral and everything. And, the same for Naomi's parents, but for a child, God, that had hard.
Yeah.
It had to have been so hard. Did you have something you were looking up?
Yeah. If I could find what the paper was, what the document was.
Oh, so, unfortunately with Naomi's case, there's really not much more for me to say. There just isn't much more that we know. There's very few details available in this case. So we spent this episode tracing the quiet tragedy of Naomi Kidder, an 18-year-old girl with a daughter at home, a restless spirit in her bones, and a future that ended somewhere between Rawlins and a dirt road outside of Casper. She wasn't some anonymous runaway. She was a mother, a sister, a daughter, and someone out there decided that she didn't deserve to come home. Theories have swirled for decades. Some names continue to come up again and again. Others are whispered in forums and case files, but never confirmed. And while no one has ever been arrested for Naomi's murder, the list of possibilities grows clearer the deeper that you dig. So walking through the most likely suspects, because someone out there's still holding the missing piece. We've got Larry DeWayne Hall, who tops the list at a solid 40% or better. His documented activity in Wyoming, his obsession with young women, his MO, and the document that was in his possession reportedly listing Naomi's name. That's not coincidence. That's a huge red flag soaked in blood. And number 2, we've got DeWayne Eaton. This piece of shit comes up all the time, and I figure him at about a 25% in Naomi's case. He was living just miles from where Naomi's body was dumped. His known behaviors and geography fit. His Manita residence, his violent tendencies, all of it lines up with the brutality that Naomi endured. We also can't rule out an unknown local offender. Also about a 25% chance. Natrona County is remote, rugged, and filled with places where a body could stay hidden for decades. Someone who knew those back roads and oil-filled halls might have had the perfect cover. There's also the unknown one-off offender, which I put at maybe 20%. A traveler, a trucker, a hitchhiking nightmare come true. Rawlins sits on I-80, which is a pipeline for predators, as we know after this season. We also have to admit that there could be another unknown serial killer, since every other son of a bitch in the country was running around Wyoming during this period of time. There's probably some that we don't know about.
Wow.
There's probably about a 15% chance that it's an unknown serial killer, which could definitely be tied to other Great Basin murders. Royal Russell Long, I put at 10% for the reasons I already talked about. Robert Van Rhodes and Clark Perry Baldwin, 5% at best, I would say, on them. And Naomi Kidder's case sits in limbo, not for lack of evidence, but because the system failed her over and over. Her dental records weren't even entered into NCIC until freaking 1994. She sat in a cold case file for 12 years, unknown, unnamed, while her killer breathed free air. And when officials went looking for DNA evidence decades later, nothing. That kind of negligence isn't just frustrating, it's devastating. It turns maybe someday into probably never. But that's the thing about the truth. It doesn't rot, it waits. And if someone's still out there, still holding on to guilt, still holding back the full story, this is your wake-up call. Because Naomi deserves better than silence. And Bobbi, her daughter, deserves some damn answers. This isn't just a case, it's a wound. And until someone faces justice, it stays open. Naomi Lee Kidder wasn't just a name in a file or a photograph frozen in time. She was a daughter, a friend, a young woman still carving her place in the world. But above all, she was a mother. At just 18 years old, Naomi carried the weight of a child and 1,000 dreams. Her baby girl Bobbi was her light, the one person Naomi would never have willingly left behind. She wasn't running away from responsibility. She was walking toward possibility, looking for work, looking for a change, looking, maybe, for a life that she hadn't yet been given the chance to build. And for Bobbi, that loss wasn't just tragic, it was life-defining. Because when someone kills a mother, they don't just take one life, they fracture a family. They leave behind birthdays missed, lullabies unsung, and decades of questions that never get answers. Bobbi grew up with a hole where her mother's voice should have been, a whole childhood marked by absence. No warm embrace before school, no hand to hold during heartbreak, no one to whisper back, "I love you too," just silence. And the haunting knowledge that her mother's final moments were stolen, violent, and unjust. Naomi never got to watch her daughter take her first steps into adulthood. She never got to see Bobbi laugh at her own child's jokes or cry over life's little heartbreaks. She was robbed of every milestone, every ordinary miracle that mothers are meant to witness. But even in death, Naomi mattered, and her life mattered. And the fact that she was forgotten, unidentified for 12 years, abandoned by the very systems that were supposed to protect her, is an insult that cannot be forgiven. Today, we remember Naomi not as a statistic or a cautionary tale, but as a whole human being, a mother, a woman with strength in her bones, courage in her heart, and love in her hands, even if the world didn't give her the time to show it. And to Bobbi, whose strength in the face of unimaginable loss is its own kind of legacy, we see you too. We honor you, and we stand with you in demanding answers, accountability, and the dignity that your mother deserved. Because Naomi Kidder should never have been a mystery. She should have been a mother growing old, and we will never forget her name again. Naomi Kidder deserved so much more than what she got. She deserved a life, a future, a chance to raise her daughter and find her own place in the world. Instead, she got a barbed wire noose in a shallow grave off some godforsaken Wyoming back road. And then, the system failed her all over again. Her family filed a missing persons report in 1982, and yet her dental records weren't even uploaded until 1994. 12 years of silence, 12 years where she remained just another Jane Doe, while the people who loved her waited and wondered and broke.
She was 18, just a kid herself, and she had a baby, Bobbi, a little girl who had to grow up without answers, without memories, and without the kind of justice that any of us would demand if it was our own family. This wasn't just a crime, it was a theft, a disappearance, a brutal act followed by institutional apathy.
And make no mistake, somebody out there knows who did this. Maybe they were in Rawlins that summer. Maybe they knew Naomi. Maybe they've stayed silent because silence is easy when it's not your daughter who's gone. Well, it's not easy for us, and it never will be. If you know what happened to Naomi Kidder, anything at all, reach out. You can contact the Wyoming DCI, contact Natrona County Sheriff, reach out to us at info@darkdialogue.com. Don't just sit on what you know.
And if you believe in what we're doing, telling these stories, demanding better, fighting for victims, support Rocky Mountain Reckoning and the entire Dark Dialogue Network. Patreon.com/Dark Dialogue Pod, Ko-fi.com/Dark Dialogue, Substack.com @Dark Dialogue 1, or go to darkdialogue.com to learn more, submit tips, or join the collective.
Naomi's story may have been buried for over a decade, but we're digging it up, and we're not stopping until the people responsible for her death and for the cover-up that followed are held accountable. Remember, make the guilty face the reckoning.